Hi there, everyone. Welcome to The Daily Gardener. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's May 31st, last day of May. Why do you garden? This was a question that was posed in a Facebook group I belong to, and it received over 1,400 responses. The most popular were, it's calming, to bring beauty into my life, to connect with nature, and finally, healthy food. There's another benefit that many people often overlook, and that is staying physically active. If you take a look at your Fitbit after spending time in your garden, you'll realize it's a workout. Here's today's brevities. It's the birthday of Charles McIlvaine, born in Chester County, Pennsylvania. He was a captain in the Civil War, an author, and a mycologist, and he was born on this day in 1840. When he was 40 years old, he moved to West Virginia. He started writing for magazines like Century and Harper's, but McIlvaine is best known for his study of mushrooms, and he took copious notes, which he compiled into his book called 1,000 American Fungi. What most distinguished McIlvaine is the fact that he experimented on himself, eating hundreds of mushrooms and toadstools. This is how McIlvaine came to be known as Old Iron Guts. Since McIlvaine had a love for writing before he had a love for mushrooms, when he wrote about mushrooms, his language was often very flowery. Consider what McIlvaine wrote about the oyster mushroom. The camel is gratefully called the ship of the desert. The oyster mushroom is the shellfish of the forest. When the tender parts are dipped in egg, rolled in breadcrumbs, and fried as an oyster, they are not excelled by any vegetable and are worth of place in the daintiest menu. Here's the vomiting russula. Most are sweet and nutty to the taste. Some are as hot as the fiercest cayenne, but this they lose upon cooking. Their caps make the most palatable dishes when stewed, baked, roasted, or escalloped. Finally, I have to share a poem that he wrote called Our Church Fight. I'm that nigh near disgusted with the fight in our old church, where one halves 'gen the other, and the Lord's left in a lurch, that I went and told the parson if he'd join me in a prayer, we'd slip out amongst the daisies and put one up from there. On this day in 1920, Virginia Woolf was gardening with her husband at the new home that they had bought the previous year, and she wrote about it in her diary. The first pure joy of the garden, weeding all day to finish the beds in a queer sort of enthusiasm, which made me say, this is happiness. Gladioli standing in troops, the mock orange out. We were out till 9 at night, though the evening was cold, both stiff and scratched all over today, with chocolate earth in our nails. It's the death day of naturalist, artist, and taxidermist Martha Ann Maxwell, who died on this day in 1881. She helped found modern taxidermy. At just 5 feet tall, Maxwell became an accomplished hunter. One historian wrote, "What distinguished Martha from other taxidermists of the day was that Martha always attempted to place stuffed animals in natural poses and amongst natural surroundings. This talent was what would separate her work from others and make her animals so popular with exhibitors and viewers alike. People who saw Martha's exhibits of Colorado wildlife doubted that a woman had actually done the work. Martha had heard these comments over and over. At one point, she wrote the words "woman's work" on a small sign and placed it in front of her exhibit. In unearthed words, today is the birthday of Walt Whitman, who was born on this day in 1819. When he was 54 years old, he suffered a stroke that left him paralyzed. He spent the next 2 years immersed in nature, and he believed that nature had helped to heal him. He wrote, "How it all nourishes, lulls me in the way most needed. The open air, the rye fields, the apple orchards." Here's an excerpt from Whitman's poem called "This Compost." "Now I am terrified at the earth. It is that calm and patient. It grows such sweet things out of such corruptions. It turns harmless and stainless on its axis, with such endless successions of diseased corpses. It distills such exquisite winds out of such infused fetor. It renews with such unwitting looks its prodigal, annual, sumptuous crops. It gives such divine materials to men, and accepts such leavings from them at last." Today's book recommendation is No One Gardens Alone, A Life of Elizabeth Lawrence by Emily Herring Wilson. Lawrence was one of the premier gardeners and garden writers of the 20th century. Little was known about her personal life until this book. It took the author over 10 years to complete. You can get a copy of this book on Amazon using the link in the show notes for a little over $3. For today's garden chore, it's another Photo Friday in the garden. It's time to take a hosta inventory, recording the hostas that you've forgotten you even had in your garden. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. In May of 1979, Dr. Calvin Lambourne bred snow peas and shelling English peas together to create the Sugar Snap Pea at Magic Seed Farm in Twin Falls, Idaho. The farm is owned by Rod Lambourne, Dr. Lambourne's son. When Dr. Lambourne passed away in 2017, Rod took over the farm. He said, "I miss my father. I remember the night he died. I came in from the field and I was talking about the peas. And for the first time, he wasn't interested. It was a peaceful moment because he knew it was all right. He was like, 'You got this.'" Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org. And be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.